Hi all, I'm going to present my PhD research project on Bayesian variable selection for spatial-temporal quantile regression. My supervisors are Professor Sally Cripps, Dr. Nandini Ramesh, and Professor Matthew Cleary. When talking about my research problem, the impact of large-scale climate phenomena on Eastern Australian rainfall is well known and well-researched area, but the majority of research focused on the impact of SOI to the mean rainfall variability. So the goal of this research is to develop a model that captures dependency between not only the average rainfall, but also all the quantiles of monthly rainfall and these climate indices. For this, we use quantile regression as our underlying model. In next slide, I'm going to explain why it's important to use quantile regression. When talking about quantile regression is the generalized concept of median. It's not only provide the central features, but also provides the information about other parts of the response distribution. Here's a scatter plot of SOI bus rainfall for a location in Sydney. So most of the studies has focused on this mean regression line, but in order to have a complete picture, we need to look at these upper extreme quantiles like Q equals 0.95, lower extreme, and other parts of the distribution as well. So when looking at the picture, you can see there are different slopes for different quantile regression lines, meaning the impact of SOI is different for different quantile regression. So it is important to have quantile regression in order to get a complete picture. So in order to achieve our objective, we built a Bayesian hierarchical model where the first level expresses the quantile regression model where YQSM is rainfall at Qth quantile, location S and month M, and XM denotes the global climate indices, and beta QSM denotes the corresponding regression coefficients. The specialty of quantile regression is error is distributed as asymmetric Laplace, and it can be written as a location scale mixture. The second level is the prior we used on the regression coefficient. For this, we use indicator variable gamma, where if particular variable is in, the indicator variable is 1, otherwise it is 0. So when the indicator variable is 1, prior is normally distributed, and if the indicator variable is 0, prior is on the regression coefficient is Dirac delta function where point mass at 0. So to induce special dependence for the third level, we use 2 ways. First is putting a Gaussian process prior on the mean function, mu qm, and second is to putting a prior on the probability of inclusion, that is where indicator variable is 1 as a logistic regression function. That function depends on geographical location, and we put a Gaussian process prior over this function. So that is the novelty of my research. So for the data, we use monthly rainfall data from 1950 to 2022. That's rainfall data is 80% complete, and that adds up to 711 stations in NSW. And also we have the indices data set goes for the same data period. When talking about few results, the latest results, the left half shows the impact of SOI to the rainfall for locations we selected for NSW, which is known as the inclusion probability. And the right half shows the size of the impact of SOI or the coefficient values for all 12 months. So first, I'm going to talk about the median rainfall, which is very much like mean rainfall. This result shows significant impact, and size of the impact is high to the west of Great Dividing Range for the months like July and October. And for June, you can see there's a slightly high impact on some inland areas. And size of the impact is high in these areas as well. So where the inclusion probability is low, the size of the impact is also, you can see that is closer to 0. Then we are going to look at on the lower quantiles, that is dry part of the rainfall distribution. These figures show the impact of the SO and lower extreme rainfall has a considerable impact on most of the months other than January, February, and March. And the size of the impact also high in these areas, as you can see from this right figure. There is low significant impact on June compared to the median rainfall. So then we are going to look at on the upper extreme rainfall, that is the wet part of the distribution. And June shows high significance, as you can see from this left figure, in the most areas of this NSW. And November also shows high significance throughout these quantiles. And furthermore, you can see how the impact of SOI changed throughout these quantiles for all the locations in NSW and for the 12 months. To do some further analysis, we selected some individual stations near coast, inland, and far away from coast. For near coast, where we choose Sydney Botanic Gardens, and for inland, we choose Dunedin. And for far away from coast, we use Pooncarie Station. When talking about the results near coast station, this figure, the left half of the slide shows inclusion probabilities versus quantiles for 12 months, and right shows the coefficient values versus quantiles for same 12 months. And the red line shows the inclusion probability of 0.75, which is we considered as a threshold for a look at the significance of the inclusion probability. And also purple boxes include some interesting results. From these figures, what you can see is impact and the size of the impact of SOI to the rainfall changes with the quantile values. And June shows significant impact in the upper quantiles near coast, and November shows significant for most of the quantiles, and the size of the impact is high in those areas of high inclusion probability. And also December shows high significance on the lower tail rather than on the upper tail. And when talking about the inland station, which is Dunedin Post Office, November shows high significance throughout the quantile values. And June shows high inclusion probability in upper tails. And July shows increasing probability for most of the quantiles. And also you can see the impact of SOI is high in those areas. For this station far away from coast, which is Pooncarie, July shows high impact rather for this area than near coast and inland. Unlike in other two areas, you can see March shows a high significant impact on this station, which is far away from coast. When talking about the key findings, research show the impact of SOI on monthly rainfall is higher in areas to the west of Great Dividing Range, particularly in the spring months for the median rainfall. SOI has significant impact on the month of June, as you can see from those figures for most of the location in NSW for the higher quantiles. And SOI has a greater impact on upper tail of the distribution than the median for several months of the year. So about my research project progress and way forward. For this chapter 1, I have done the variable selection for quantile regression, where locations analyzed independently. I have included the missing value treatment as well because we have missing values. Second, I have done the variable selection for quantile regression, where locations analyzed jointly, that is inducing the spatial dependence. So for now, I have including one covariate, that is SOI, OI, OD, or SAM. To way forward, we have to extend this model to a complex model that include multiple indices like IOD, SAM, etc. And so that we can consider their correlations. Also, last step is to develop a full spatial temporal variable selection model so that we can detect any temporal or spatial changes in this relationship between global climate indices and rainfall. Thank you for listening. If you have any questions, please contact me via this email.